All right, let's talk about Lab 5. Lab 5 is pretty cool. It's just an extension of Lab 4. Now in Lab 4, we had this conflict. Actually, before I start talking about Lab 5, let's go back to when we were doing just purely pneumatic circuits. When we did pure pneumatic circuits, we found there was conflict. And we resolved that conflict by adding a relay valve. Well, because we're dealing with electropneumatics, we're actually going to do the same thing, except instead of adding a relay valve, we're going to add a relay, just a relay. Okay, let's jump into this PowerPoint that I did, which is super cool, and we'll jump in and we'll talk about what to do. All right, here we go. So welcome to conflict resolution in electropneumatics. Pretty cool. So what the circuit was in Lab 4 in the worksheet was this, and there were these two buttons here, and they actually helped you remove the conflict. Let's talk about what that conflict was and why it was there. What's going on is that B minus is active. Okay, so what does that mean? What does that mean? Oh, A minus is active as well. Well, what does that mean? Well, it just means that both A cylinder and B cylinder are retracted in the beginning. Before we press any buttons, they're both retracted. So A minus and B minus are active. But the thing is, A minus is held active. The reason A minus is held active over here is that because B is retracted. When cylinder B is retracted, this limit switch is closed. When cylinder B is retracted, this limit switch is closed. So therefore, this guy is energized. And the problem is this. Let's take a look over here. What we can see here is that as long as this guy is closed, this is going to be energized. Now, the first thing I want to do is make cylinder A extend, and the way I do that is I press the button, this energizes, but nothing happens. The reason nothing happens is because this is energized. The spool has been moved this way. The spool's been moved this way. So therefore, because the spool's been moved this way, when I energize this, it's not going to move this way because this is energized. So I have to remove this. Well, it's easy. I can just put a button in there and press it. All right, so I'm going to press a button. Therefore, this is de-energized so that now when I press this button, this will energize. Well, it did energize before, but it will actually move the spool and things will start. But there's actually more conflict here. Check this out. Okay, now when A extends, this will become closed and it will energize solenoid B plus, and B plus, the cylinder B, will extend. When cylinder B extends, it then has to retract. Watch this. Cylinder B extends, this becomes closed. As soon as this becomes closed, it energizes this. But you know what? Cylinder A is still extended. So this is energized, just like we had between the two A's. Now we have a conflict later on down the cycle in between these two B's. It's not going to work. Oh, you know what? I can remove this conflict by removing the power to solenoid B by hitting this, and then all of a sudden, because this is closed, this will energize, the spool will move, and cylinder B will retract. Done. But that's a lot of button pressing. That's no good. Is there a way to get rid of that? Yeah, we had a relay. Cool. So when we're taking a look at this, we're going to add a relay, and we're going to add something called was logic. Okay, the was logic will remove the use or the need for the normally closed push button. What's going on here is that we're adding what's called a memory latch. It's remembering the event of cylinder B extending, and then it's going to allow this rung to happen. Now, this rung doesn't happen until the very end. The problem was that this rung was already energized before I even pressed this button. But now, because this is open, where's that coming from? Here. This is not going to close until this happens. Yeah. So what's going on here is that I've added was logic in here. Now, the was logic in here is this. It's if B plus was and B minus then A minus. So what's going on here is that, take a look at it this way. I'm saying that if B plus extends and it has now retracted, then it's okay for this to happen because this is long gone. I don't have to do this anymore. I only had to energize this just for a moment. So what we can say here is that we can say that this contact is telling you that this was extended. Now, by the way, just the disclaimer, was logic isn't a real thing. Okay, I just, it's just a term I made up, but it really works. It helps you in your process, in your thinking about your programming. But don't go around talking was logic because they'll think you're crazy. Okay, but just keep it in your head. Here we go. Let's explore this just a little bit more here. So now, what's going on is that if you walked up to this contact and you asked that contact, hey, R1-3 is limit B, I can say, is cylinder B extended right now? So I can say here, hey, R3-1, is cylinder B extended right now? Well, if it's closed, it can tell you only one thing. It can say, well, I can tell you that it was extended, but I can't tell you if it is extended because this is a memory latch. It's holding on to the memory of the event of the cylinder extending. So therefore, I'm able to use a piece of logic that says, if the cylinder was extended and now it is retracted, then do this. That's where the concept of was is. But again, don't go telling anyone I told you about was. All right, let's move forward. Now, that is essentially, that's how you solve that. Although there's a little bit of a problem. Wait a second. This is a holding circuit, and I did something illegal. I created a holding circuit without a termination contact. Do never, ever, ever, ever do that. Oh, did I say never do that? Yeah, don't ever do that. Always put a termination contact in here. Okay, so but where do we get it from? Well, whenever you put your termination contact in here, you're always going to do it after you no longer need this holding circuit to be active. Well, that's after the whole thing is done, or more specifically, after this has been energized. So I can actually just put a relay in parallel with this and throw a normally closed contact up there like this. It's nice and simple. So I still have the same logic in here. If B was extended and now B is extended, then do this. As soon as this energizes, it kills this, it kills that as well, and that's fine because I don't need to have this held anymore because it's already retracted. So therefore it's done. So you're done. So that's it. So nothing like adding relays to add a little bit more logic. So in this case, we added a was. Now, the next circuit, which was part B, is actually a little simpler. Before I go into the conflict, which is actually the same, I just want to tell you about this. Now, what's going on is that I have a spring return solenoid. Now, a spring return DCV, solenoid B plus extends the cylinder. How I retract the cylinder is I just de-energize this. So what I'm going to do is this signal is going to come in here. When A extends, it's going to make B extend, or it's going to energize B. B will extend. When B extends, this will become closed. This will energize. It will open this up, and when this becomes open, this de-energizes. Well, there's only one solenoid on the DCV, so the spring takes over, moves the spool, and then it activates the DCV to retract solenoid B. Okay, so I press play here, solenoid A goes out, B extends, and then B retracts. Now, the problem is actually A won't extend because I have the same conflict. Well, guess what? I can just resolve the exact same problem. There's really no difference here between the first circuit and this circuit, except for there's one less solenoid with B. No big deal. Okay, good. So that's fine. I can just take this and remove these by doing the was logic, right? So I can say if B was extended and now B is retracted, then you can go ahead and do this. And again, I've put this in here, up here. I'm always going to put a termination contact in any holding circuit I do, and it's pretty easy because I want to terminate this when this goes out, or more specifically, when this energizes and actually makes it retract. And that is it. There you go. So that's all about was logic. But it's really good thinking process, and we're using memory latches to hold on to an event. So we can say that I'm not going to actually do this unless that's happened, or maybe even unless that's happened and now it's not happening. Pretty cool. Okay, so yeah, go into the lab and build that stuff.